There are two main mistakes that Tyla made in terms of referring to herself as colored in America. Number one, she did not know her audience. And number two, which I think this is the most important, is just respecting your audience. This is a good example of empathy in cross-cultural communication. So we have to think about like other people's emotions, right? When they hear a certain word comes from their history. So you have to take that into consideration and respect that. That is a way of showing empathy to people. Because it's not really about her intention, right? She could just say, hey, I understand that this word makes you feel this way, and I will just adjust how I speak so I don't hurt you. That's not a lot to ask, especially when you are within that group. Okay, she can go back home and refer to herself the way she wants to, but I think we're just losing sight of like what it means to just understand and have empathy for people and not just center yourself. She could center the audience, her audience as well. Because if you know your audience, right, and you know their history, what you can do is that you need to understand that words cannot just be thrown around. Meaning that as important as this word is to you from a cultural or heritage standpoint, you are walking into a different space. So what you need to do then is, number one, if you don't have the time and space to truly explain what that word means to you as a person, then find a different way, okay, to describe your heritage. Because if you understand how deeply hurtful a word like that can be to an audience, I just won't throw it around without proper time and proper opportunity to give strong context behind it. And you can just do that and then move on. But I think the key thing here is that you can be proud of your culture and where you are and your heritage, but that same thing doesn't translate well everywhere. This is not as easy as saying, people in America call this a garbage can, and in another country they say it's a rubbish bin. That is different. That is a completely different context here. And I think people are just trying to simplify it as it's something so simple as these words have different meanings in different places. It is not. It's something that is deeply, deeply hurtful to a lot of people. And if you're going to use it, if you're going to refer yourself as such, I would just advise that she has enough time and enough space to be able to provide context around it. And the third thing I want to add is that this is an audience that she's trying to win over. And they don't have to support her if what she says deeply offends them.
Okay, we all need to start being a bit more serious when it comes to this conversation around Tyla, specifically Black Americans, and the reason for her recent numbers with her EP. So there is a recorded pattern of Black girls in pop and R&B spaces not getting the recognition and attention they deserve, be it Normani, Chloe Bailey, Coco Jones, Tinashe, even Victoria Monet, not getting the flowers they deserve. And yet when it comes to Tyla, we now are saying that the reason is because she hasn't bowed down and accepted the American market and respected them for how she was supposed to respect them. I think there is genuinely like an actual problem. Like, I get diaspora wars, but even like back to Essence Fest and how Black Americans were saying they were going to be boycotting African braiding shops. And again, this same boycott question came into play when there was Africans were coming back and saying we don't want to be referred to as African braiding shops because it's a bit offensive and reductive. That's not how we want to be described. And Black Americans like, well, if you don't want to be called that, we're not going to come to you anymore. And it's like, Africans are not allowed to know who they are. Africans are not allowed to stand in who they are and be confident and be assertive in America because it really, really, really triggers something within Americans. It's the same thing as when Beyonce released Black is King and Africans were like, well, we can't actually access it. And Americans like, you should be grateful she's even talking about your music, when no African ever asked Beyonce to make Afrobeats music. That's benefiting Beyonce's repertoire and not Africans. Like, what? And like, it's just this consistent thing where Africans really have to be humble in Americans' minds. And if they're not humble, they have to be at least ridiculable. They have to have a really strong accent that is memeable. They have to look a certain way. They have to fit some type of American stereotype. to be perceived as visibly black and embarrassingly African, and not someone like Tyla, who is sexy, young, lit, confident, knows herself, is sure of herself, can hold her own, and very sure of who she is. And Americans are not upset about the colored comment. They're upset about the fact that Tyla knows and understands who she is, and has a strong understanding, strong enough to not be forced into a different direction and repackaged for the consumption of the American audiences. Like with Rihanna's claim to fame, she very easily fit into the mold of the American, like, girl next door type thing. She was seen as foreign with like Music of the Sun, but Good Girl Gone Bad, she immediately turned to this kind of pop R&B, very American sound and image. Tyla is so unapologetically African, and her terminology is African, and the way she sees herself as African, and the music she loves is African, and the way she acts is African, and that really, really unnerves African Americans. And I think that the truth is that the reason Tyla's album didn't do well, or EP didn't do well, is because of just the fact that a lot of black girls aren't doing well in pop and R&B at the moment. A lot of black girls. And my advice to Tyla is just to focus on making the best art ever, so that when you put out your next project, whether it sells 300,000 or whether it sells 3, people will not be able to deny the talent. Because, I mean, to be honest, even this EP, the music is good. So, honestly, I don't give a fuck about the numbers. Obviously, the thing is, the labels will care about the numbers, and you have these people trying to humble you and trying to say that the reason you're not doing well is because of the fact that you're not accepting that you're a black woman. Just keep knowing who you are and keep knowing what music you're supposed to make. And if any label is worth the fucking money that they charge or take from you, they will know that you and your strong image is a strong quality you have. And this narrative that people are trying to push on Tyla, and the reason she's not winning, is them at a last-ditch desperate attempt to try and humble her and convince her to ditch her security in herself and start believing and trusting and just going by what African Americans say. That's the reason they're saying that now. They're hoping that Tyla crumbles under this pressure and just succumbs to whatever black Americans want. And the reason why the black Americans that say this feel so strongly about this is because black people worldwide suffer from such low self-esteem that when a hot, beautiful, young, talented, alluring, charismatic girl does not see themselves as black, but comes across as black in their eyes, that really just upsets them, because then they feel like then they're missing out. But you just need to eat rocks. Like, honestly, you need to eat rocks. You need to get a life. Like, I don't know what else to say.
If you're not African American, keep scrolling. You need to stop with your colonizer mentality. Outside in the rest of the world, we think differently. We use different terminology. There are words that you find offensive that we don't. There are words that we find offensive that you don't. And this idea that when someone comes to America, they need to fall in line, which is something I've heard a lot of African Americans saying. With that egocentric way of looking at the world, it starts to have kind of colonizer vibes. You're talking about people that come from a different culture. You're speaking as if their culture is meaningless because you believe your culture is more important than other people's. It's a global community. Tyla is an international artist. When people come to your country, they should respect your ways, but that doesn't mean erasing their culture because you don't like the way that they describe themselves. I'm not here to educate you on what colored means in other countries. Google is free. Look at the history, why it's so important for her to identify with the word colored. I've heard people talk about Trevor Noah. He didn't have a problem with it. Probably because he's not colored. Him to fall in line with the way things are in America is a lot easier than someone who identifies with a term that you find offensive. Me, as a black British person, is very disappointing for me as a black man who I'm born and raised in the UK. I've lived in Poland and I live in Denmark. To hear European people being more understanding and more accepting of Tyla, who is a coloured person in South Africa and a black person in America, to be more accepting of her culture than African Americans is very disappointing. You don't own blackness in other cultures and other countries. You have your history. Different countries have different cultures and histories. If you would like to not have people have that negative opinion when Americans come to their country, this is the first step.
From being the most viral artist post-COVID and the most viral artist who's ever received so many shows in the United States of America, Tyla has found herself again on hot waters after his past interview that actually she did comes to ruins her career. So basically, there's an outrage in the United States of America after recently Tyla releasing his album his new album, which Black Americans claim that it flops. Out of so many copies that he created, the Black American claims only a third of her albums were sold out in the State of America. Now, Tyla's main crime is identity. So I want you to watch. These are the South Africans' reaction, the comments about the whole saga versus what the Black Americans in the United States, had to talk about the whole issue.
I'm noticing that most Americans are failing to respect the fact that certain things are done differently in other countries. Because how are we still talking about Tyla's race in 2025? Like, how many times are we going to have to explain that Tyla is regarded as a colored woman in the country that she's from? She has identified as a colored woman her whole life. And now because the word colored makes you guys uncomfortable, she should change her racial classification to fit in or to be liked or to please you guys. Come on.
It's so funny how y'all are calling Americans entitled because we're asking for...
The problem here is that we are trying to have an educated and intellectual conversation with a country whose schools are filled with more bullets than books. So education has never been your priority, and hence why you're spewing so much garbage that you're not even trying to learn anything from anyone. I want to hold your hand when I tell you this. America is not the golden standard for the world. The expectation is not that everything that is American is perfect. I know movies and music videos have lied to us, and yes, in Africa, some of us may have believed that America was a great country until we allowed ourselves to interact with you guys on the internet, and then we realized, Spaza shop that thing. Now, let me hold your hand once again and explain something to you. If your identity requires a hyphen in order for you to have an identity, let me give you an example. African American, Black American. I would think that you would then sit down and listen to the people whose identities you have hyphenated together to get your identity. Because if you are calling yourself an African American, I would think that you would want to then listen to Africans when they are teaching you about the culture that you only tap into during holidays when you are going to the motherland to be in touch with your roots. We don't have to step in and out during holiday periods within our cultures and our identities because we live them on a daily basis. You need to step and learn from us what Africanacity is, what being an African is. You can't even point out Africa in a map. Some of you in America, majority of you, still think we roam around with lions. Majority of you can't even identify and distinguish between African as a continent and countries in Africa. But here y'all are, trying to fight someone who's clearly telling you that in their country, there is a denomination of people called colored people. As a matter of fact, a typical American person, if they were to arrive in South Africa, we would spot them as a colored person until they told us otherwise. And when they do tell us otherwise, do you know what's the difference between my country and yours? We would respect your identity. But nay, you will not do that because you can't even respect the identities of Native Americans. You can't even respect the identities of Americans in your own country. There are trans people whose rights you're trying to take away the identities of women. You're trying to... anything and everything that seems to be a little bit of a threat and that does not align with your movie-filled and movie-thrilled world, you'll want to attack. Tyla went to America and became successful. She's not there to take anyone's bread or butter. This is the same thing you're doing with Mexicans by trying to strip them of their power, trying to strip them of their identity and make them identify something that you want. Tyla is colored in South Africa. What you should have done as a person who's hyphenating their identity is then sit down and ask yourself, what are colored people? Where do I fit in when it comes to this? And go and learn about colored people in South Africa. South Africa, which is in Africa, the Africa that you fought for to hyphenate and identify as. But when it comes to us informing you and educating you about our continent, you then want to tell us that we should respect you. Respect you as what? You went and called yourself Shaniqua, Laniqua, and Eloise and thought you were being African while you were mocking us without even understanding who we are. Your lineage is and your bloodline is African. And the only people who can call that country America Americans are the endangered Indians that are from there, that you guys have displaced. Americans, all you are doing is that you are colonized and now you are sub-colonizers. You're wanting to replicate the same oppression that white people did unto you to anyone else who identifies as anything that's different. Congratulations, you are black. But I'm assuming that your blackness also stems from the motherland that you tap into when you feel like it. And if that is the case, maybe you should sit down, listen, and let's explain to you what blackness is actually in Africa. We are tired of this conversation. We are over it. And quite honestly, Tyla, step on the next some more, my baby. Because somehow they think you were only successful when you arrived in America. You were not. And even if they were to kick you out of America, you'd still be successful here in Africa. And that is our conversation, and that is the end. If your identity requires you to hyphenate, listen to the two parties that you've hyphenated with. And so far, there's nothing about you that you can identify without Africa or Americans. And you are neither. Without the two parties, listen to the two. Then come back to us. And Tyla is African. When she's teaching you something, learn. But she's from the roots that you only tap into when you feel like it.
While we're on that topic, Black Americans have no right to tell South Africans that Tyla must identify as Black. As we've seen in the past week, the colored community can be very anti-Black and racist. So how are you going to force people who don't share the same lived experience as us? In apartheid, they were seen as above Black people and therefore had a little bit more privileges than us. We've seen the horrible things that some of them had to say about us just because a few Black men on a podcast said something about their community. All of a sudden, it was directed towards all Black South African women. So you cannot come here and erase my identity as a Black South African woman and tell me that I need to be grouping people who are of mixed heritage and don't even share the same culture and lived experience as a Black person. No. A woman who looks mixed and me are not going to have the same experience, babe, in South Africa and outside. So you cannot come and tell me that she needs to be the image for Black South African women globally when we have actual Black South African women who are standing tall on the international stage within their own right, like Nomza Mumbata, Tusombedu, among many others. This is particularly why the Black American community literally has zero representation for Black women on their international media. That very same media, they don't have proper representation for Black women, and it's wrong. Because there's no reason why people are fighting for Zendaya to play Princess Tiana. Come on, guys.
Okay, I think I've grasped what is going on with Tyla. So did she say you must all call me colored, or did she say in South Africa I am colored, in America I am Black? What exactly did she say? Yes, in South Africa we have colored people, we have white people, we have Black people, and we have Isfebe. They are a whole different category of people. Whole different category, don't ask. If the word colored is offensive in America, it has a different meaning in America. You are not forced to call Tyla colored in America. But in South Africa, she is colored. That is how she sees herself. That is what she knows, and that is what she identifies as. Is that the reason people are now not streaming the album? That can't be the reason, guys. Kim, there's people that are dying. Yo, in America, there's people who identify themselves as different fruits and shapes. I've met someone who identifies as a triangle. Did I now strike at that person because they are clearly a woman, not a triangle? No, everyone's allowed to identify what they want to identify as. Let's stop fighting. Like,
Tyla Lavra Sethol, better known as Tyla, is a 23-year-old singer